Oh, and welcome to this tier list ranking of Mike Oldfield albums. So I thought I would do this just for a bit of fun, really, just to go through his entire discography, the main albums, not all the live stuff, and just go through and rank it. Now we have an S rating, S tier, which is obviously the top, creme de la creme, going all the way down to a D tier. Now, this is my opinion. Obviously, everyone's going to have different opinions on where they would place things, but please do leave in the comments where you would put these albums yourself. And we're going to start sort of in chronological order, really. So we're right down here with the original Tubular Bells. Now, obviously, Tubular Bells is synonymous with Mike. It's a real classic album. I think pretty much everybody has a copy of it somewhere, maybe on vinyl or cassette, or it's in everyone's homes. It was a phenomenal creation. We can't deny it. The human element to it, the angst and turmoil that Mike was going through whilst writing it. It's a real amazing historical document. So for that reason alone, I think it has to go into S tier because it is just a legendary album. Absolutely. Next we come up with, it's not quite in order actually, so I'll just do it in the order that I've got here. So next we've got Ommadawn. Now Ommadawn is an album that is extremely special to me, and I know it's very, very popular with lots of Mike Oldfield fans. I think by the time he did Ommadawn, he was starting to get into his stride, and he was able to refine his ideas and the production values, and just everything about the musical composition was just so strong, so convincing. And again, I'd have to put this one into the S tier category. Now, obviously, I am a Mike Oldfield fan, so there is a sort of a certain bias, I suppose, but I am trying to be as objective and as fair as possible. Next up, we've got Hergest Ridge, which was his second album. It was always going to struggle against Tubular Bells, but it's still a remarkable album, very pastoral, but with a lot of kind of stormy sections as well. Quite different to Tubular Bells, very, very kind of different mood and atmosphere. But I think it's a beautiful album, and it's got some really amazing moments. I think it struggled a little bit in terms of production and sound quality. Whilst there have been lots of reissues and remasters, it just didn't quite have the sonic sound to it like perhaps Ommadawn and Tubular Bells. It always sounded a bit muddy in places, but a really, really fantastic album that I would put into the A tier. Next, we've got the Orchestral Tubular Bells. I've put this one in just because it was kind of released, and it is its own sort of release. But this was arranged by David Bedford, and it's a difficult one because I have a huge amount of respect for David Bedford, phenomenal composer in his own right. I just don't feel like the arrangement works all that well, and I think sometimes it's a little bit heavy-handed, and it doesn't quite come across as well as the original, obviously, but it sort of lacks something. It's not one that I ever really listened to a great deal. I just found it a bit bloated and a bit heavy going, so unfortunately I'm going to place that one into the C tier. Next up, we've got Incantations, which just is a phenomenal record, probably one of his longest albums, 4 long tracks. Very, very different sound again to his earlier albums, much more influenced by sort of minimalist composers like Terry Riley, Philip Glass, and it's wonderful. It's a wonderful album. However, it does have moments where it overstays its welcome a little bit in parts. Repetition is kind of just on that edge of being too much repetition. I think it would be a really fantastic album if it was trimmed down to maybe 45 minutes or so, but it is a significantly longer album than that, and I think it just loses its way just a little bit in places. So I'm going to put that one down into the not into the D tier, goodness me. No, I'm going to put it into the B tier. Next up, we've got Platinum. So this is where his style was starting to change, and we were starting to hear more songs, shorter instrumental tracks as well, much more kind of lean bite size. It has a very sort of it's not quite 80s, but it's definitely on its way there to having that kind of digital sort of sound. And there's some good music, some good tracks, a few covers as well. So it's a good album, but I would probably put it into the B tier. Then we've got Exposed. I've decided to include this one because it's a live album, but I feel like it stands well on its own as well. And it's a really good introduction to Tubular Bells and Incantations in a more bite-sized form. I actually think the version of Incantations is great because it's streamlined, it's got less repetition in it, and it's a bit shorter. And I think the sound quality is fantastic, and it really, really just... even today sounds amazing. The performances are phenomenal, and there's also the DVD version as well where you can see the musicians playing, and it's fantastic. I really, really do recommend this album, and I'm going to put that into the A tier. Next is QE2. This is where we're getting right into the 80s territory, but still quite focused on instrumental music. There are again some covers and some songs, but a lot shorter. No more sort of really long instrumentals anymore. He's going more for the kind of short radio length kind of songs, and it's good. It's good. Some of the sounds are a little bit dated now, because of obviously it being an 80s album, but it is a good album, well worth listening to, and I would put that into the B tier. Then we got 5 Miles Out. So this is kind of like the big brother to QE2 in a sense, in that it's got a slightly more substantial quality to some of the songs, and there's a little bit longer actual instrumental tracks as well, so it's a bit beefier, I would say, this album. There's a little bit more to get your teeth stuck into with this one, and overall, it is a very, very strong album with some very, very good vocal tracks. And overall, just, really, really good. And again, I'm going to put this one up into the A tier because I do think it is a very good album. Then we got Crises next. Again, this is starting to move towards the more vocal albums now. Although there is a long instrumental, there's much more focus on songs, and this will become a kind of a common theme during this kind of period of time for Mike. And it's good. It's not too bad. The instrumental Crises is perhaps my least favourite of his long form instrumental compositions, but it is a good album. Production value is pretty decent throughout. There's some good songs on there, but it doesn't quite stand out as much for me as some of the others. A little bit controversial, but I'm putting it into the C tier. Then we've got Discovery. Now, this album is pretty much just songs, although there is The Lake, which is an instrumental, which is a really, really great instrumental. But the majority of this is a vocal album, songs, and I think the songs are really strong. They're very, very catchy. The instrumental playing by Mike on guitar and the overall structure of the songs is really satisfying to listen to. So I actually think this is a very, very strong album from Mike, and I'm going to put it into the A tier. So it's the big boy now. It's Amarok. So this is the single 60-minute track. It's quite divisive because obviously some people absolutely love it, but others find it very hard to get into because it's quite chaotic at times. It's hard to sort of pinpoint particular sections because it's all kind of flowing as one, and it's one of those albums that you kind of have to listen to all the way through or not at all. It's quite hard to just dip in and pick a couple of things, which is kind of what Mike was aiming for. He didn't want people to have just, a selection of songs that you could just kind of dip into. He wanted it to be anti-radio, really, so that, it wasn't going to be played on the radio as such because it was one long track, and it was very much a finger up to Richard Branson. I've got a long history with this album, as people who know me will be aware. Having transcribed it, I'm very, very familiar with the album. It's a very, very difficult one for me to place because of my relationship with it. I don't know if I can quite get it into the S tier, but I do feel it is A tier. But it's very, very close to S tier as well, I would say. Next up is The Killing Fields. So we're kind of going back a little bit now. This was his film score to the film, The Killing Fields, and very, very different type of music, obviously, because it had to reflect what was happening in the film, although he approached it in quite a unique way. I think there's some really unique sound design, and his use of synths and electronic sounds was quite creative and imaginative, as well as the more conventional orchestral and choral writing that we feature. Yeah, I mean, it's a good album. I think it's always hard with a film score because you're kind of tying it to the film itself. But I think there are some strong musical ideas there, definitely. So I would put it in a B tier. Then we're coming up to Earth Moving. And yeah, this was, I suppose, Mike's attempt at singing a little bit more on his albums. And again, more song-based, more song-focused. And we're coming out of that sort of 80s period and kind of transitioning into the 90s at this point. I feel like this was the weak point for Mike. I think the songs don't quite hold their ground quite in the way that some of the earlier albums did. And his attempt at an instrumental, a longer instrumental, is not, it's not great. It's not great. I've listened to it quite a few times and I just cannot find anything really in it that warrants repeated listens. And I know that's tough, that's brutal. And this is going to be my first one to go in the D tier. Sorry, Mike. Then we've got Islands next. Again, this is one of his earlier albums, sort of 80s, where it features a long instrumental and then shorter songs. The instrumental, actually, the wind chimes, is nice. I think, again, he's quite creative in his use of synths, because it is, it's quite a synth-heavy album, but it's quite creative. He uses quite a lot of vocal ideas in there as well from other cultures, which would return and feature in other albums that he's done. And the songs themselves are good. I think this album sits kind of comfortably probably in the C tier, I would say. There's nothing inherently bad about it, but it doesn't quite stand out as much. So then next up we've got Heaven's Open. So this one is an unusual album because for one, it's the first one where he lists his name as Michael Oldfield instead of Mike Oldfield, and it just doesn't work very well. It just doesn't hold together very well at all. There's some just poor production values, I feel, in this one. It's musically, it feels a bit strained and feels a bit forced. And I must say I incorrectly talked about the instrumental that was in Earth Moving. Actually, I should have said that that's in Heaven's Open. I've got these two muddled up, sorry. So I'm actually going to move this one up because I was thinking about Heaven's Open, actually, when I was talking about this one. So Heaven's Open is the one that goes in the D tier, unfortunately. Then we got Tubular Bells 2. This was the first Mike Oldfield album that I ever heard. And the production is fantastic because Trevor Horn was producing this. So it has his signature kind of sound, really. Very focused, very pure, very clear, very crystal clear sort of sound quality. And obviously this is our 90s kind of album. But I think it's a phenomenal sequel. I really do. I think it's got some fantastic musical ideas, some of his strongest that I would consider. So this one goes into the A tier comfortably. Then we got the songs of Distant Earth. This is I suppose, a little bit like a concept album. Shorter tracks, much more sort of electronic sound. It's a much more sort of sci-fi driven, very, very sort of spacious sounding, atmospheric. And I guess this is kind of where he was going a little bit at this time, was exploring more of the modern production techniques, I suppose, that he would then explore in some of his more later albums, the more electronic side of his output. I do like the songs of Distant Earth. I think it has some good tracks, but It's not one that I really return to a great deal. It doesn't quite hold my attention. I think the musical ideas are a little bit simplistic, and there's not enough that kind of really grabs my attention and my ear. Really, it feels just a little bit too basic for me compared to his other albums. So I'm going to put this one probably into the B tier. Then we got Voyager, which is his kind of Celtic style album. It's a very sort of it's got a very particular sound quality to it. Again, there's songs, some covers, and you've got a long instrumental as well at the end. To be fair, one of his best, very sort of cinematic, orchestral sounding instrumentals. Again, this is one that I don't really return to a great deal. I think there's just something about the albums at this time, in this period of time, that just doesn't quite do it for me. I think it hasn't got the creativity of, say, the early 80s albums, and it's got that kind of dated sound to it, and musically it's not as sophisticated, so it just doesn't quite hang so well for me. So I'm going to pop that one into the C tier. Then we got Tubular Bells 3, so this is the next in the trilogy, and this was written at a very different time again. He was doing very, very different things, and it's a lot more focused. Instead of it being like a long instrumental, it's divided up into sections, small tracks, with a kind of underlying theme throughout. And I actually think this is very, very good, a very good album. The climax at the end, where we kind of hear the bells and we hear the kind of the original Tubular Bells bass line come back in, is really great, with a kind of Far Above the Clouds motif in there. So I think it's a very, very strong album, and that goes into the A tier. Next is Guitars, which is his exploration really in creating music just using guitars and synthesizers, and generating his musical ideas through the guitar alone. And it's a very bite-sized album. Everything's quite sort of concise. The tracks are all pretty short, and it's not so much that it's a filler album, but it just doesn't have the weight and the gravitas as some of his other albums. Perfectly fine to listen to, nothing really offensive in there at all, but nothing that really jumps out to me. So it's a C. Then we got Tres Luna. This is his kind of real foray into electronic music. A lot of the sounds are a little bit generic, and the songs themselves just seem to lack that sort of creative spark. Again, it sounds perfectly fine. You could have it on as background music and there would be no real major issues there, but there's nothing really that jumps out and makes you think, wow, that's amazing. In the same way that, say, listening to, say, QE2, there would be things in there, even though they're short bite-sized songs, there's things in there that would just kind of catch your ear and catch your attention. Tres Luna doesn't really do that for me. So it's just about into a C tier. Then we got the Millennium Bell, obviously written for the Millennium. Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's got the Tubular Bell icon on it, so it sort of instantly gives you feelings that you're going to be kind of hearing a sort of a Tubular Bell style album. But it's a bit of a mishmash, really. It's got a bit of everything in there, but nothing's really focused. Everything's all a bit sort of hazy, and it sounds like a lot of ideas that he had that didn't really kind of develop too far. Now, there are some good musical ideas on there, don't get me wrong, there's some good things, but when you're looking at an album and rating it, you're trying to look at the whole thing and the flow of it and the direction and the general overall picture that it paints, and I just don't really feel this one kind of does that for me. Again, this one's probably just about C tier, if I'm generous. Then we got Light and Shade. Wow, I don't really know what to say about this one. He was starting to explore electronic dance music and much more modern production techniques, a lot less use of real instruments and more sort of software-based instruments. And it's a it's a bit of a mess in my opinion. You've got the kind of the two albums in one, if you like. You've got the light and the shade, light and shade. But the music itself is really forgettable. There's very very little on there that I can even really remember a great deal of. It's okay for background music, I suppose, but you don't really want Mike Oldfield to be background music. But there's just nothing here that stands out, unfortunately, for me. So it's D tier, unfortunately. Then we've got Music of the Spheres. This was his first fully orchestral album with the help of Carl Jenkins, who conducted and sort of arranged and all of that. And again, this is a really good album, and it feels more like Tubular Bells. It feels more like an orchestral Tubular Bells. So in a way, it would have been better to have had the maybe the Tubular Bells logo on this one, because it kind of does have similarities in places, but it's really good. It's really very very good. The production value is good, the performance from the orchestra is great, the musical ideas are strong, and it flows really well. So I'm going to put that into an A tier. Two more to go. Then we got Man on the Rocks. This was his, I suppose, most recent vocal album. A lot more song based, kind of a bit more rocky, excuse the pun. A lot more focus on more rock-based instruments like drums, guitars, bass, vocals, rather than, you know, keyboards and orchestra and other instruments. This is much more of a focused song-based album. But again, it doesn't have the musical appeal that some of his other albums had. I think the songs that he did in the 80s were really creative and imaginative in the way that he was using synthesizers, and that made his songs more interesting, whereas his more just focused rock-based songs just don't seem to do it for me, unfortunately. So it's a C. Let's get that in there. And then finally, Return to Ommadawn. This has been his last album, and probably will be his last album. I'd be very, very surprised if he releases anything new now. And it was his return, I guess, to trying to write something that inhabited that kind of 70s vibe. You know, 2 long instrumental tracks, lots of kind of live instruments, hand played, much more development of musical ideas, you know, really going back to the way that he composed his early, maybe first 3 or 4 albums: Tubular Bells, Hergus Ridge, Ommadawn. And it's good, but it's like a watered down, less intense interpretation of who he was when he was a lot younger. And I admire him for giving it a go. It doesn't quite do it, unfortunately. You know, it's trying to create something that he was in a very different place, mentally, physically, you know, all of that when he wrote this compared to, say, when he wrote the original Ommadawn. And the intensity isn't there in the same way as the early albums. So whilst it's a worthy listen, it really doesn't hold a candle really to the earlier albums. I'm being pretty generous here, and I'm going to put it into a B tier. So that is my tier listing. As you can see, fairly even across the A, B and C's. Couple in the D's and a couple in the S's. What do you think? Do you agree or do you disagree? Now, I'm pretty certain there's going to be lots of disagreements, but let's be polite and respectful in the comments. Let me know what you think. Were there any that you were really surprised with my listing? It'd be good to find out. But yeah, I just wanted to do this, and if it's a successful format, then I may do it with some other bands and artists as well. But anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, please do hit subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you all in my next video.